Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. As always, I'm Jeremiah, and we are back again for episode 200, and this is actually a very special show. 200 episodes. We're the only show on the network that have surpassed this amount of episodes, and honestly, I can't believe it's almost been a year since I started this. So hopefully there's a lot more to come with this podcast in the GSMC Podcast Network. But for what we're going to talk about today, I wanted to start off with the New York Jets and what are they doing with the quarterback position. And I will discuss what happens. What's going to happen now to Jay Cutler, Tony Romo, and possibly Colin Kaepernick, as all the starting positions are starting to dwindle down, and the NFL, the competition committee, wants to change the overtime rules, and they do want to hire full-time refs. And first things first, let's talk about the New York Jets. Well, yesterday, they signed Josh McCown to a 1-year, $6 million contract. And, Josh McCown has been he's been most notably known as a journeyman, a backup quarterback, so to speak. He's been a really solid backup to have. He's been he's a really good placeholder guy to have at the quarterback position. But, when you talk about the Jets team and their quarterback problems that they've had for a while, is this a good move? I just don't get, how would you get Josh McCown instead of signing guys like Jay Cutler, Colin Kaepernick? I actually think those guys were better options than McCown. I just don't get why I get why teams are shying away from Cutler and Kaepernick. I get it, but when you want to win games, you kind of want to get the more talented guy. And Josh McCown hasn't really... He's just honestly just proven that he's a backup. But what this says to me more is that maybe they're going to draft one of the quarterbacks this year, or they're probably going to start Christian Hackenberg. That's one of the things that I kind of can take away from this. You never know. They can probably draft Mitch Trubisky at the number 6 overall spot. Or maybe they can take a flyer on a guy like Deshaun Kaiser, maybe Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. Maybe they can draft those guys as well. So maybe they're focused on the draft class this year and the quarterbacks, even though it's pretty weak. So if they decide that Christian Hackenberg is not going to cut it, who they drafted in the second round last year, maybe they will get one of those guys in this year's quarterback class. So Josh McCown's contract is fully guaranteed. He can actually earn up to $13 million in pretty much in an incentive-heavy deal. So remember, Josh McCown's 37. He's one of the bottom barrel quarterbacks to have. You got Bryce Petty, Christian Hackenberg behind you. So I do think there's going to be some competition for the starting quarterback role, and honestly, it looks like that the Jets are pretty much tanking at this point. I think they're taking for the number 1 overall spot. I just really don't know. I just really don't have any other way to put it. They're on a full on a full rebuild right now, and they pretty much cut guys that were veterans like Darrelle Revis, even though he kind of stunk last year. They cut Brandon Marshall. And, McCown hasn't really won a whole lot of games. He has a 2-20 record over the past 3 seasons. He's been on, but to his credit, though, to be fair, he's been on a lot of awful teams. He was a backup to Jay Cutler, which is funny because he signed to a team before he did now. And I can honestly see, but if things hold up to this point right now, if the depth chart is the same in the preseason, if it's Josh McCown, Christian Hackenberg, and Bryce Petty, if it's those three guys, I can honestly see McCown being the opening day starter and Christian Hackenberg taking over midway in the season. Unless Hackenberg outperforms McCown in the preseason, you just can't do it there. But to be realistic here, no matter who starts at quarterback for this team, the Jets are not going to win many games. And I think they're going to be probably the worst team in the league this year. I just can't really. They haven't done a whole lot to inspire me. There's just so many holes on this team. Even the receivers that they have been having nagging injuries. So I honestly think that the Jets may be playing for the 2018 draft to draft one of the top quarterbacks in there. You got guys like Sam Darnold who can come out. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. Jake Browning can come out. So you got guys in the Pac-12 that can make an impact in the draft in 2018. And maybe the Jets are going after those guys. But, when you got guys on the market like Jay Cutler, who I'm not going to lie, he's not the best starting quarterback there, but, he's been solid enough. You got Colin Kaepernick, who's been to a Super Bowl, even though he hasn't won a whole lot of games the past 2 years. We've seen the upside there. So, honestly, all I can say, the Jets are they're not inspiring right now. They're just, I don't really like the direction that they're going this year. If I'm a Jets fan, and if you were to tell me Josh McCown was going to be my starting quarterback, I would be like, well, we're not going to win many games. We're probably going to win 2 games. And I did say, over the past 3 seasons, McCown has had a 2-20 record. Don't get me wrong, I like McCown as a bridge quarterback, but there's not a whole lot of talent on this team. He's been one bad team to another. And he's 37 years old, so yeah, there's really not a whole lot to get inspired there. He is an experienced starter, so I get that part. And I think this is the year where they're going to try to find out what they have in Bryce Petty or in Hackenberg. I just, if they take a shot at one of the rookie quarterbacks in the draft class, I think it's kind of going to ruin the development a little bit for Hackenberg and Petty. I don't know I think if they get Mitch Trubisky, they're probably going to focus more on him. But if this is the year where they want to tank and want to go for the 2018 class, I think this is the year where they finally decide to get a long look at Bryce Petty or Christian Hackenberg. And I think this is a very important year to do it because you're not going to win a lot of games anyway. You're probably going to win at most 2 to 5 between that range. So from that point, I do like it, because I kind of want to see Christian Hackenberg actually play in the game. And he was one of the quarterbacks I thought we were going to see last season. But, he was inactive for most of the year. And then you got Bryce Petty, who's been inactive for most of his career. So I think the Jets really need to know what they have at the quarterback position. And remember, McCown he's had troubles with injuries too. So maybe this can, that could possibly give a reason to start Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty. So it's going to be a competition between those two guys. I do see McCown being the starter by default because he does have the experience there. And he has proven that he can be a good bridge quarterback. But if I were to pick one of these guys to end the year as the Jets starting quarterback, if they happen to not draft any of the quarterbacks in this class, or at least one of the top prospects, and they don't make any other moves in free agency at the quarterback position, if they don't sign Cutler or Kaepernick, I see McCown being the starter by default. And by the end of the year, I think Hackenberg will take over. And we're going to see what we have in the second-year player out of Penn State who was drafted in the second round last April. And you never know, Bryce Petty could get some time in there too. So it just all depends on how these guys perform in the preseason. And I'm not inspired by the Jets at all. I think they're going to tank. I think they're in tanking mode. I pretty much think they are. There's not a whole lot to get inspired about this team. There's just really not a whole lot of talent. I do think this is going to be one of the worst teams this year. But this is going to be one of those seasons where to see what they have at the quarterback position, because that is the most important position in all sports. All right, well, I'm going to take my first break. And when I get back, I'm going to discuss what happens now to Jay Cutler, Tony Romo, and Colin Kaepernick with Josh McCown signing to the Jets. I will talk about those three gentlemen when I get back to Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. And I previously talked about Josh McCown going to the New York Jets and how it impacts the other quarterbacks on the market and this year's quarterback class. But, sticking to the quarterbacks in the free agent market right now, there's three notable names. One of them will probably not be on the team for multiple reasons. Two of them may be on the team. One of them will definitely start for another team. So the player that I think will start on a team next year, well, for a new team that is Tony Romo. For some reason, he's still on the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe that's because Jerry Jones doesn't want to rush the trade process, or he just doesn't want to play in Houston. Jay Cutler is still a free agent. It looks like the market has been cold. I kind of thought the Jets would take a flyer at the former Bears quarterback. Maybe the Cleveland Browns can take one now. There's one, looking at all the starting quarterbacks and all the teams. It looks like the Jets are going to go with Josh McCown as a starter. The Browns, I think, are the one team left. Well, I should say the Houston Texans and the Browns are probably the only two teams left that are not really happy with their starters. Denver, I would put them in that category, but it looks like they like Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian. They did say that they would be interested in Tony Romo if he were to be a free agent. So they want to trade for him, especially with that contract that he's currently signed to with the Cowboys. So, those are the other two gentlemen I think will start. Colin Kaepernick, on the other hand, I don't know if he'll be on the team. He may not be on the team, for several reasons. I did discuss it yesterday if you guys want to check that out. But to his football skill alone, I think he can be a really good backup. He can be a solid starter, a bridge quarterback. But, a lot of teams are not going to take a chance on him because there was a report that a lot of NFL GMs really dislike Kaepernick for his political stance in August. Or I should say the entire year. But when I look at all these three guys, and I'm not going to put Jimmy Garoppolo in this with these guys because it looks like as each day goes passing and passing. It looks like the Jets are not going, not the Jets, but it looks like the Patriots are not going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the Cleveland Browns. So it looks like that will not happen. It looks very unlikely now as we go each passing day. And it looks like Kirk Cousins is not going to get traded. It looks like he's going to stay in Washington. But, we can't be so sure about Tony Romo staying in Dallas. I just don't see how that can work out. You can't pay a backup quarterback more than $15 million a year. You can't do that. And, Jay Cutler, I really thought he would have had a lot of interest, especially on some of the bad teams like New York, the Jets and the Browns. Looks like the Texans, I thought they would have had interest in him, but reportedly, it looks like the Texans are not really interested in Jay Cutler. And, do you think the Browns would stick with Brock Osweiler at quarterback? Remember, the Browns did say that they were trying to trade Brock Osweiler, and if they couldn't find a trade partner, they were going to cut him. Well, he's still a member of the Cleveland Browns. So, do you think the Browns would want to start Brock Osweiler? He's still a member of that team. So, if the Browns, let's just say hypothetically, the Browns stick with Brock Osweiler at quarterback, which I think would be pretty good for both parties. I think Brock Osweiler is probably the best quarterback on the roster right now, which is saying a lot to that team. I actually do like Cody Kessler. I do like him a lot. I think he's one of those guys that takes the time to develop. But, he's not a starting quarterback right now. But let's hypothetically say that the Browns would start Brock Osweiler at quarterback. The Jets will start Josh McCown. Let's just say Tony Romo goes to Houston. So, do you think Denver would probably take a chance on Jay Cutler? I don't think so. Remember, John Elway wasn't in the front office when Jay Cutler was traded from Denver to Chicago. So he wasn't a part of that front office, but, there's been a reputation of Jay Cutler not being a leader in the locker room. She's not a leader at the quarterback position. So there is that. But, when you have a team like the Broncos that has a really top-notch defense, really top-notch talent at the wideout position, why wouldn't you take a shot at Jay Cutler if Tony Romo's not available? I would. Honestly, I think the only missing piece to your team right now is a quarterback. Because let's just say that Tony Romo does get traded to Houston. The Broncos are going to have to go all in with Paxton Lynch or Trevor Siemian. I don't think they want to do that. I think they know that the ceiling for this team, the Super Bowl window, is closing soon. Remember, everybody on that defense is getting a year older. We had DeMarcus Ware just retire. That defense is not going to be good for a while. It's not going to be good for a long time. I think their window is closing. I think the only player that can be good for the next 10 years is Von Miller. But, he is around his mid-20s. So, I think Denver should take a shot at Jay Cutler if there's no other place to go. If there's no other quarterback to go. Because remember, Denver did have Brock Osweiler, but they're not going to sign him. They're not going to have him with that contract. There's no way that the Broncos would go. They would not sign Colin Kaepernick. There's way too many political issues there. John Elway has been he did go to the inauguration for President Donald Trump. And he looks like he has been a GOP supporter. And we know Kaepernick, he's not really the ideal person to talk about when it comes to GOP party. and conservatives. So I don't see that happening. Colin Kaepernick, I can't see him going to the Jets now for a couple of reasons. Because one, Josh McCown, and then the other quarterback, the other young quarterbacks there, and they might draft a quarterback. And plus, Woody Johnson, he has been a Donald Trump supporter. And I did say that Colin Kaepernick is a conservative nightmare. So that's not going to happen. Even though New York is a very progressive city. So realistically, if the Browns stick with Osweiler, which I don't think is going to happen, I'm speaking in hypotheticals here, maybe Colin Kaepernick will be out of the job. He'll be on the couch when the season starts. So realistically right now, I can see Colin Kaepernick go to the Cleveland Browns. That's the only realistic spot I can see him go to. There was mutual interest with Hugh Jackson and Colin Kaepernick a couple years ago. We know when Hugh Jackson was interviewing for the 49ers job, and Hugh Jackson loves he loves those type of quarterbacks too. He likes quarterbacks that are very athletic, and I do think Hugh Jackson could be a really good coach for Kaepernick. And Jim Harbaugh, he did say that people are too quick to judge quarterbacks, and if given a chance, Colin Kaepernick has the stuff to get another team to the Super Bowl. So remember, this is coming from Kaepernick's former coach at the 49ers, the only guy that really had confidence in him. So remember, Kaepernick is only 29, has 4 postseason wins. So if he has a really good team around him, I do think he can be a playoff quarterback. He has to have a great team around to be a Super Bowl quarterback. And we all know how great that team was in 2011 when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl in New Orleans. So how I see all this transpire is we still got a long way to go in free agency. I'm not going to say Kaepernick is blackballed by the NFL. I'm not going to say Cutler's going to be on the couch. I don't see those two guys not being on the roster when training camp comes, or especially when preseason comes. I don't expect Tony Romo to be on the Cowboys. So, honestly, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with these 3 guys. But I'll tell you right now, they will be on a team. Tony Romo would not be on the Cowboys. I just don't see that happening. So, we just have to wait. We just have to wait to see where these guys end up. And, it will impact... It will impact a lot of the other players on the team, and honestly, it could probably impact the draft too. So I can honestly see Jay Cutler and Kaepernick signing with the team before the draft, and if they happen to not on the roster after the draft, we might have to wait till June to see where these guys will sign. We might have to wait a long time. And if Tony Romo's not on another roster before the draft, I will actually be surprised. In April, I don't expect him to be in the Cowboys. And remember, we're only 1 week away from April 2. By the time the draft comes, I do expect all 3 of these guys to be somewhere. Well, I'm going to take my last break. And when I get back, I'm going to discuss the NFL possibly changing the overtime rules a little bit. They want to shorten the game's quote unquote 5th quarter. So I will discuss the changes that the NFL competition committee wants to make to the overtime period, and I will discuss my thoughts on that when I get back to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Well, there could be a makeover to the NFL overtime rules. When the NFL competition committee, they will gather for the owners, well, not the owners, but the annual league meeting in Phoenix next week. One of the changes that they will talk about is shortening the overtime period from 15 minutes to 10 minutes. So this is going to be one of the topics that's going to be widely discussed next week at the annual league meetings. And NFL Network, NFL Network's Judy Batista, I believe that's her name, tweeted Monday that the committee will propose reducing both preseason and the regular season overtime periods from 15 to 10 minutes. So the postseason games, they will keep the 15-minute time limit. But honestly, though, I'm not a fan of shortening the overtime period from 15 to 10. I'd rather have the league go into kind of like an NFL style type of overtime change. And for a couple of reasons, I've never been a fan of ties in the NFL. We had several of them. I think we had like 3 last year. I hate ties. I hate ties. I hate ties in the NFL. I just think that it's one of the games where you need to have a winner or a loser. Soccer, I can understand there for being ties. Hockey, they don't do it anymore, but I understand why they had ties. They don't do it anymore, though. So, I honestly think this is something that could happen because, the NFL is all about player safety, and I do think this is one of the things that they think is going to make the game safer, which in a case it could. But I'd rather have them either go to a college-style overtime or maybe have some type of field goal shootout or something. I just think that they don't. I just feel like they should not have ties in this game. This is another way for teams to have a disadvantage. I would want an overtime period where both teams have a chance to score. So we saw the flaws in the overtime period in the Super Bowl. And the biggest game that a lot of people watched, we had our first overtime game. The Patriots were tied 28-28. So when the Patriots and the Falcons were tied, the Patriots had the ball first. And they scored first. And not only did they score first, they scored a touchdown first, which means that they won the game. I just think that both teams should have a chance to score. So we'll just say if the Patriots scored a touchdown, I think the Falcons should have had a chance to at least score a touchdown. And if they couldn't capitalize on that situation, then the Patriots would have won. But to be fair, the Falcons should have stopped the Patriots from scoring. And I might have just contradicted myself. But, you kind of have to look at both sides here. Let's just say the NFL does go to the overtime rule changes. And this has been something that a lot of people have been wanting for a while. A lot of people have not been a fan of overtime at all. So let's just say if this is something that does happen, does that mean that you have to pay players more just in case of injuries? Because they can't go into double overtime. They can't. They can't go into double overtime. I think if you don't put a time limit and you just make it a sudden death match, maybe put the balls at the 20-25 line. You don't make a team drive all the way 99 yards or maybe 80 yards. You should have placed the ball at the 25-yard line like they do in college. And you have to score or stop the team from scoring with no time limit. I would actually like to see the college style overtime in the NFL. I honestly think they should try it for at least 1 to 2 years, and if it doesn't work out, then change it back. I think you have to experiment with it a little bit. Just because you make a change to a rule doesn't mean that you have to implement that rule forever. So, let's just say that, this happened. Let's just say like a team is tied on a Thursday night game, which I think Thursday night games are still ridiculous. So let's just say that a team playing for a total of a 15-minute overtime period. Let's just say the night before a team has to play Thursday night and they were in overtime for 15 minutes. I can see that point from changing the time from 15 to 10. Honestly, if the league is so concerned with teams playing too much before a Thursday night game, why can't they just get rid of Thursday night games altogether? The games are pretty much crap anyways. 2 days is not enough time to turn around and play a full 60-minute game. So I would like the league to go into overtime changes, and if this does impact Thursday night football, why can't they just get rid of Thursday night football? And I know they have a contract with NBC, CBS, for Thursday night games, but kind of have to play. You kind of have to think about that for a little bit if you want to really change these overtime rules. If you're so concerned about player safety, then why do you make your players play a full football game 2 days after they just played one on Sunday? I don't know. We'll see what happens with this proposed overtime rules change. And then the competition committee also wants to hire full-time refs. So that's something that is going to be talked about as well. So we will see how these two things play out. I do think the overtime rules, I think the minutes from 15 to 10, I think it can actually happen. But we will see what happens with the overtime rules and the NFL hiring full-time refs next week. So we will see what happens with those potential changes. All right, well, that's going to do it for me. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow. Anthony will be here as well. We will discuss anything that happens over the next 24 hours. As always, I'm Jeremiah, and I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. You guys have a good day, and come back tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.